Have you ever stood at a crossroads, staring at a decision so daunting it feels like the weight of the world rests on your shoulders? Maybe you've whispered a quiet, desperate prayer choir, God, I don't know what to do. Please lead me. If you've been there feeling lost, unsure, or overwhelmed, you're not alone. Surrender is a word that often feels counterintuitive, especially in a culture that places so much emphasis on control, self-reliance, and always having a plan. We're taught from a young age to strive, to push harder, to take charge of our lives. But what if the true power lies not in clinging tightly to control, but in loosening our grip and choosing to let go? What if surrendering is not an act of weakness, but the ultimate declaration of trust and courage? When we talk about surrender in the context of faith and life, it's not about giving up or abandoning our responsibilities. It's not about throwing our hands in the air and saying, I'm done. Surrender is an intentional, deliberate act of placing our trust in something greater than ourselves. It's choosing to believe that we don't have to carry the weight of the world alone. But here's the thing, surrender is hard. It feels unnatural because we're wired to seek control. We crave certainty. We want to know how everything is going to play out before we take the next step. We make endless plans and backup plans, thinking that if we can just anticipate every possible outcome, we'll somehow be safe. Yet, no matter how much we plan, life has a way of throwing us curveballs, unexpected challenges, heartbreaks, and detours that leave us standing at the edge of our own limits. And that's the moment when surrender begins to reveal its power. Because surrender doesn't happen when life is easy or when everything is going according to plan. Surrender happens in the messy, uncertain, and vulnerable moments. It's born in the realization that we can't do it all, that we don't have all the answers, and that maybe, just maybe, we're not supposed to. Think about it, how many of us have found ourselves gripping so tightly to a situation, a relationship, or an outcome that it left us exhausted and depleted. Control gives us the illusion of safety, but it often robs us of peace. We lie awake at night, replaying scenarios in our heads, trying to solve problems that aren't ours to solve. And in those moments, we lose sight of one simple truth: we're not meant to carry it all. Surrender, on the other hand, invites us to release the need to control everything and instead trust that there's a bigger plan at work. It asks us to believe that even when we can't see the full picture, there's a purpose to the chaos. It's about stepping back and saying, God, I don't have all the answers, but I trust you do. Lead me. But surrender isn't passive. It's not about sitting back and waiting for life to happen to us. It's an active process that requires courage and intentionality. Surrender is about making the choice every day to relinquish control and place our trust in God's hands. It's about showing up, taking the next step, and trusting that the pieces will fall into place even when we can't see how. What's remarkable about surrender is that it doesn't take away our agency, it enhances it. When we let go of the need to control every detail, we free ourselves to focus on what truly matters. We're no longer paralyzed by fear of the unknown or weighed down by the pressure to have it all figured out. Instead, we find the clarity and strength to take meaningful action, trusting that we're being guided. Of course, surrender doesn't mean the road will always be smooth. In fact, it often means stepping into the unknown where the path is uncertain and the stakes feel high. But it also means we're not walking that path alone. When we surrender, we're saying, I don't have to have it all figured out because I know someone who does. And that knowledge brings a sense of peace that's hard to put into words. There's a profound humility in surrendering and admitting that we don't have all the answers. But there's also incredible freedom. When we stop trying to control everything, we create space for God to work in ways we couldn't have imagined. We begin to see doors open that we didn't even know existed. We experience moments of grace and serendipity that remind us we're being cared for, even in the midst of uncertainty. Surrender also transforms how we see ourselves. When we let go of the need to be perfect or to have everything under control, we give ourselves permission to be human. We allow ourselves to admit, I'm tired or I need help without shame. And in doing so, we invite others to step in and support us. Surrender isn't just about trusting God, it's also about recognizing that we're not meant to do life alone. It's worth noting that surrender isn't a one-time event. It's a daily practice, a choice we make moment by moment. There will be days when it feels easy to trust, and there will be days when we wrestle with doubt and fear. But each time we choose to surrender, we're reminded of a truth that's often hard to see in the middle of life's chaos. We're not in control, but we are held by the one who is. The beauty of surrender is that it doesn't change our circumstances, it changes us. It softens our hearts, quiets our fears, and reminds us of what really matters. It teaches us to let go of the things we cannot control and to focus instead on the things we can, our choices, our attitudes, and our willingness to trust. In surrendering, we find a strength we didn't know we had, a peace that surpasses understanding, and a path forward, even when the way seems unclear. Uncertainty is one of the most challenging aspects of being human. From the moment we're born, we crave stability, predictability, and answers. We want to know what's coming next, what tomorrow holds, and how our choices will unfold. And yet, life has a way of throwing us into situations where the path forward is anything but clear. In these moments, we're faced with a choice fight against the unknown or lean into it, embracing the uncertainty with an open heart and mind. For many of us, the instinct is to resist uncertainty. It's uncomfortable, unsettling, and often downright terrifying. When the future feels unclear, our brains scramble to make sense of it, filling in the blanks with assumptions, fears, and worst-case scenarios. This is a survival mechanism. Our minds are hardwired to seek patterns and create a sense of order, even in chaos. But in doing so, we often create unnecessary stress and anxiety. We convince ourselves that we need to have everything figured out before we can take the next step. The truth, however, is that uncertainty is not something we can avoid. It's a fundamental part of life, woven into every decision, every relationship, and every dream. No matter how much we plan, there will always be factors outside our control. And while this reality can feel daunting, it also holds a profound truth. Uncertainty is where growth, discovery, and transformation happen. Embracing uncertainty doesn't mean we have to love it or stop longing for clarity. It means learning to coexist with the unknown, to hold space for the questions and doubts without letting them consume us. It's about finding the courage to move forward, even when we don't have all the answers. One of the most powerful ways to embrace uncertainty is to shift our mindset. Instead of seeing the unknown as something to fear, we can begin to view it as an opportunity. Uncertainty is the fertile ground where possibility lives. It's the space where creativity, innovation, and resilience are born. Think about it, some of the most meaningful breakthroughs in our lives often come from unexpected places, paths we never planned to walk, conversations we didn't anticipate, or opportunities we couldn't have predicted. When we cling too tightly to certainty, we limit ourselves. We become so focused on controlling the outcome that we miss the beauty of the journey. Embracing uncertainty allows us to let go of the need to know everything and instead trust that the process will unfold as it's meant to. It's an act of faith, not blind faith, but faith rooted in the belief that we are capable of navigating whatever comes our way. But how do we embrace uncertainty when it feels overwhelming? One way is by focusing on what we can control. In the midst of the unknown, we can anchor ourselves in the present moment. We can ask, what is the next right step I can take today? Often, we become paralyzed by the enormity of the uncertainty, but breaking it down into small, manageable steps helps us regain a sense of agency. Another powerful tool is gratitude. When we're facing uncertainty, it's easy to get lost in the what-ifs and the fears of what might go wrong. But gratitude shifts our focus to what's already good and stable in our lives. It reminds us that even in the midst of chaos, there is still so much to be thankful for. Gratitude doesn't erase the uncertainty, but it helps us approach it with a steadier heart. Embracing uncertainty also requires us to be kind to ourselves. It's okay to feel scared, overwhelmed, or frustrated. These emotions are a natural response to the unknown. The key is not to let them define us. Instead, we can acknowledge our feelings, give ourselves grace, and then choose to keep moving forward. Community is another vital part of navigating uncertainty. We are not meant to do life alone, and sharing our struggles with others can bring immense comfort. When we open up about our fears and uncertainties, we often find that others are walking similar paths. Together, we can offer encouragement, wisdom, and perspective that help us see the unknown in a new light. One of the most profound lessons about uncertainty is that it teaches us to release the illusion of control. So much of our stress and anxiety comes from trying to control things that are beyond our reach, other people's actions, the timing of opportunities, or the outcomes of our efforts. But the truth is, control is a mirage. When we let go of the need to control everything, we create space for something greater to unfold. There's a beauty in the unknown, even if it's hard to see at first. It's where dreams take shape, where we discover strengths we didn't know we had, and where we learn to trust ourselves and the journey we're on. Uncertainty invites us to be fully present, to embrace the moment we're in rather than getting lost in the future. It's important to remember that embracing uncertainty doesn't mean we won't have moments of doubt or fear. These emotions are part of the process, and they don't mean we're failing. In fact, they're often a sign that we're growing, stretching beyond our comfort zones and stepping into new territory. In many ways, uncertainty is a gift, even if it doesn't feel like it at first. It reminds us of our humanity, our resilience, and our capacity to adapt. It pushes us to deepen our faith and to lean into the relationships and resources that sustain us. It teaches us to be flexible, to let go of perfection, and to embrace the beauty of imperfection. When we learn to embrace uncertainty, we open ourselves to the fullness of life, the highs and lows, the questions and answers, the moments of clarity and the stretches of mystery. It's not an easy path, but it's a path that leads to growth, transformation, and ultimately a deeper sense of peace. Vulnerability is often misunderstood, especially in the context of leadership. For many, the idea of being vulnerable conjures images of weakness, fragility, or exposure. We equate vulnerability with losing control, and in a world that prizes strength and certainty, that can feel like the opposite of what a leader should embody. But what if vulnerability is not a liability, but a powerful tool for connection, authenticity, and trust? What if leading with vulnerability is one of the most courageous and transformative ways to lead? At its core, vulnerability is about showing up as your authentic self, even when there's no guarantee of how you'll be received. It's about embracing uncertainty and being honest about your struggles, fears, and imperfections. It's the willingness to admit, I don't have all the answers, or I made a mistake, without losing sight of your worth or your commitment to growth. For leaders, vulnerability is especially critical. It humanizes them. It creates a bridge of connection between them and those they serve, reminding everyone that leadership isn't about being perfect, it's about being real. And in a time when people are yearning for leaders who are trustworthy, transparent, and empathetic, vulnerability is no longer optional, it's essential. One of the most common misconceptions about vulnerability is that it's the same as oversharing. Leading with vulnerability doesn't mean divulging every detail of your personal life or expressing every fear and doubt without restraint. Instead, it's about intentionality. It's about sharing what's relevant and meaningful in a way that fosters connection and builds trust. Take, for example, a leader who's guiding their team through a challenging season. They could choose to project a facade of unwavering confidence, pretending that everything is under control. On the surface, this might seem reassuring, but it often has the opposite effect. The team can sense the disconnection, and it can make them feel isolated or dismissed in their own struggles. Alternatively, the leader could acknowledge the difficulty of the situation and express their commitment to navigating it together. They could say, this is a tough time and I don't have all the answers right now, but I believe in this team and I'm committed to figuring this out with you. That simple act of vulnerability builds trust and invites collaboration. Vulnerability in leadership also opens the door to innovation and growth. When leaders create a culture where vulnerability is valued, they make it safe for others to take risks, voice ideas, and admit when something isn't working. This kind of environment fosters creativity and problem solving because people aren't afraid of failure, they see it as a stepping stone to success. A vulnerable leader models this by acknowledging their own missteps and demonstrating how to learn from them. But let's be honest, leading with vulnerability isn't easy. It requires immense courage to put yourself out there, knowing you could be judged, criticized, or misunderstood. It's tempting to default to armor, to hide behind titles, policies, or procedures that create distance between you and others. Vulnerability, on the other hand, requires stripping away that armor and showing up fully, even when it feels risky. One of the greatest challenges of leading with vulnerability is managing the fear of judgment. Leaders often feel immense pressure to have all the answers and to appear strong at all times. This pressure can lead to a fear that being vulnerable will diminish their authority or respect. But in reality, the opposite is often true. When leaders are honest about their humanity, it inspires others to do the same. It creates a culture of mutual respect and authenticity, where people feel valued for who they are, not just for what they can produce. Leading with vulnerability also requires resilience. There will inevitably be moments when vulnerability feels uncomfortable or when it's met with resistance. Some people may interpret it as weakness or may be unaccustomed to seeing a leader who leads with their heart as well as their head. But resilience allows leaders to stay grounded in their values, even in the face of discomfort or criticism. It reminds them that vulnerability is a strength, not a flaw. Another key aspect of leading with vulnerability is empathy. Vulnerability without empathy risks becoming self-centered or performative. A vulnerable leader doesn't just share their own experiences, they also listen deeply to the experiences of others. They create space for people to share their challenges and perspectives, and they respond with compassion and understanding. Empathy transforms vulnerability from a personal practice into a relational one, fostering connection and trust within the team or community. It's important to recognize that leading with vulnerability is not about abdicating responsibility or wallowing in uncertainty. It's about finding a balance between authenticity and accountability. Vulnerable leaders don't shy away from hard decisions or difficult conversations. Instead, they approach them with honesty and humility, acknowledging the weight of their responsibility while staying true to their values. One of the most powerful outcomes of leading with vulnerability is the way it shapes culture. When leaders embrace vulnerability, they send a powerful message: it's okay to be human. This can have a transformative effect on teams and organizations. It breaks down walls of perfectionism, encourages open dialogue, and fosters a sense of belonging. People feel safe to show up as their full selves, knowing they'll be met with respect and understanding. Leading with vulnerability also has a ripple effect. It empowers others to lead in the same way, creating a culture of authenticity that extends far beyond the leader's individual actions. Vulnerability begets vulnerability, and over time, it builds a foundation of trust, resilience, and shared purpose that can weather any challenge. Ultimately, leading with vulnerability isn't about projecting an image of strength, it's about embodying true strength. It's about having the courage to show up as you are, even when the outcome is uncertain. It's about creating a space where others feel safe to do the same, and it's about leading not from a place of power or perfection, but from a place of humanity, empathy, and connection. Trust and action are deeply intertwined, forming a dynamic relationship that defines how we navigate challenges, make decisions, and pursue goals. Trust without action is stagnant, while action without trust often feels aimless or forced. Together, they create a powerful synergy that propels us forward, even in the face of uncertainty or fear. To understand this relationship, we must explore how trust inspires action and how action, in turn, deepens trust. At its core, trust is a belief, a conviction that something or someone is reliable, capable, or worthy of confidence. It can be trust in others, trust in ourselves, or trust in a higher power. But trust doesn't thrive in isolation, it needs movement to grow. Action is the natural outgrowth of trust. When we trust, we are willing to take risks, step into the unknown, and make decisions that align with our beliefs. In this way, trust acts as a catalyst for action, giving us the courage to move forward even when the path is unclear. Think about the act of stepping onto a bridge suspended over a canyon. Before you take that first step, you must trust that the bridge will hold your weight. Without trust, you would remain frozen, unable to cross. But trust alone isn't enough, you still have to take the step. That step, the action, is what transforms trust from a passive belief into a lived experience. The same principle applies in every area of life. Trust lays the foundation, but action builds the structure. Whether it's starting a new job, entering a relationship, or pursuing a dream, trust gives us the confidence to act. It reassures us that even if the outcome is uncertain, we have the strength, support, and resilience to face whatever comes. However, the relationship between trust and action isn't one-sided. While trust inspires action, action also reinforces trust. Every time we take a step forward, even a small one, we prove to ourselves that we are capable. And we gather evidence that supports our belief in the reliability of what we've placed our trust in. This feedback loop strengthens our trust, making it easier to take the next step. Consider a child learning to ride a bike. At first, they trust that the person holding the bike will keep them steady. But as they begin pedaling, their trust is tested. Each successful push of the pedals builds their confidence, not just in the person helping them, but in their own ability to balance. Through action, their trust grows, and eventually they no longer need the steadying hand. This interplay between trust and action is particularly important in the context of personal growth and faith. When we're called to step into something new or challenging, we often face a gap between where we are and where we want to be. Trust bridges that gap, but only if we're willing to move. It's in the act of stepping forward, despite our doubts, fears, or uncertainties, that we begin to see the power of trust unfold. It's important to recognize that trust and action are not immune to setbacks. There will be moments when our trust is shaken, when an action doesn't lead to the outcome we hoped for, or when doubt creeps in. These moments can feel like failures, but they are also opportunities for growth. They remind us that trust isn't about guaranteeing a specific result, it's about staying anchored in our belief that we are capable of navigating whatever comes. One of the biggest challenges in cultivating the relationship between trust and action is overcoming fear. Fear thrives in the absence of trust. It tells us to stay where we are, to avoid risks, and to focus on all the things that could go wrong. Trust, however, invites us to move forward despite our fear. It doesn't eliminate fear, but it helps us put fear in its proper place as a natural part of growth, not a reason to avoid it. Action is one of the most effective antidotes to fear. When we act, even in small ways, we shift our focus from what we're afraid of to what we're capable of. Each step we take reinforces our trust, not just in the outcome, but in ourselves and our ability to adapt. Trust and action also play a crucial role in our relationships with others. Trust is the foundation of connection, but it requires action to thrive. It's not enough to say we trust someone, we have to show it through our words and deeds. This might mean being vulnerable, taking risks together, or giving someone the benefit of the doubt. Likewise, when someone takes action to support or care for us, it reinforces our trust in them, creating a cycle of mutual confidence and respect. In the context of faith or spirituality, trust and action take on an even deeper significance. Trusting in a higher power often means stepping into the unknown, following a call or a purpose that isn't fully clear. It's an act of surrender, acknowledging that we don't have all the answers, but are willing to take the next step in faith. Each action, no matter how small, strengthens our connection to that trust, reminding us that we are guided, supported, and held. The beauty of the relationship between trust and action is that it's always evolving. Trust is not a static quality. It grows and deepens with every experience, every challenge, and every step we take. Similarly, action becomes more purposeful and confident as our trust strengthens. Together, they create a rhythm, a dance between belief and movement that carries us forward, even when the way isn't clear. Trust and action remind us that we don't have to have everything figured out before we move. We just need to take the next step, trusting that the process will unfold as it should. Whether we're navigating a personal challenge, pursuing a dream, or building a relationship, trust and action are the forces that keep us moving forward, teaching us that we are braver and more capable than we often realize. Courage is often thought of as an individual trait, a personal quality that allows someone to face fear, take risks, or stand firm in their convictions. We celebrate stories of lone heroes overcoming challenges, relying on their inner strength to achieve the extraordinary. But the truth is, courage is rarely forged in isolation. It is deeply tied to the connections we share with others. Community, the web of relationships that surround and support us, is one of the most powerful sources of courage we have. At its essence, community is about belonging. It's about knowing that we are not alone in our struggles, fears, or hopes. This sense of connection can provide a foundation of trust and safety, which is essential for cultivating courage. When we feel seen, understood, and supported, we are more willing to take risks, step outside our comfort zones, and face uncertainty. In this way, community doesn't just inspire courage, it enables it. The beauty of finding courage in community is that it reminds us we don't have to have all the answers or bear every burden on our own. When we are surrounded by people who believe in us, we begin to believe in ourselves. Their faith in our potential can be the spark that ignites our own courage. It's the encouragement of a friend who says, "You've got this," or the collective energy of a group cheering us on that gives us the strength to move forward. Consider how community shapes our ability to face challenges. When we go through difficult times, isolation can amplify our fears and doubts. Left alone with our thoughts, we can spiral into feelings of helplessness or despair. But when we reach out to others, we create space for vulnerability and connection. Sharing our struggles with people we trust doesn't make the challenges disappear, but it lightens the load. In the company of others, we find reassurance, perspective, and sometimes even solutions we couldn't see on our own. Vulnerability is a key ingredient in finding courage through community. It's not always easy to admit when we're struggling or to ask for help, especially in a world that often equates vulnerability with weakness. But the truth is, vulnerability is a profound act of strength. When we open up to others, we invite them to support us, to stand with us, and to remind us that we are not alone. This shared vulnerability fosters a sense of solidarity, creating a space where courage can thrive. Community also has a unique way of helping us see beyond ourselves. When we are part of a group, we are reminded that our actions have an impact on others. This sense of responsibility can inspire us to act with courage, even when we're unsure or afraid. Think about a parent advocating for their child, a leader standing up for their team, or a neighbor speaking out for justice in their community. In each case, the connection to others fuels the courage to take action. One of the most profound ways community cultivates courage is by normalizing fear and failure. In isolation, we often convince ourselves that we're the only ones struggling, or that our fears are unique. And this can make us hesitant to try new things or take risks, fearing judgment or rejection. But in community, we see that fear and failure are universal experiences. When others share their stories of overcoming obstacles, it reminds us that courage isn't about being fearless, it's about moving forward in spite of fear. Communities also celebrate progress, no matter how small. When we achieve something we thought we couldn't, even if it's just taking the first step, a supportive community amplifies that victory. Their encouragement and validation reinforce our belief in ourselves, making it easier to take the next step. Over time, this builds resilience and a sense of agency that fuels our courage. Of course, not all communities foster courage. For a community to be a source of strength, it must be rooted in trust, respect, and shared purpose. Toxic or judgmental environments can stifle courage, making us feel unsafe or inadequate. This is why it's so important to choose or build communities that uplift and empower us. A healthy community is one that celebrates diversity, encourages authenticity, and provides a safe space for both triumphs and failures. In addition to receiving courage from community, we also have the opportunity to give it. By showing up for others, offering support, and believing in their potential, we contribute to the collective courage of the group. This reciprocity creates a cycle of empowerment, where giving and receiving courage are interconnected. Sometimes being a source of courage for someone else can even help us find our own. And the relationship between community and courage extends beyond personal connections. It can also be found in movements and shared causes. Throughout history, some of the most courageous acts have been driven by communities united around a common goal. Civil rights movements, environmental campaigns, and humanitarian efforts are all examples of people finding strength in collective action. In these contexts, the courage of the group becomes greater than the sum of its parts, inspiring individuals to take bold steps they might not have taken alone. Faith communities are another example of how shared beliefs and values can foster courage. When people come together around a shared sense of purpose, they draw strength from each other and from their collective faith. This can be especially powerful in times of hardship, offering hope, guidance, and a sense of meaning that fuels resilience. Finding courage in community also involves embracing diversity. When we engage with people from different backgrounds, perspectives, and experiences, we expand our understanding of the world and ourselves. This broadening of perspective can challenge our assumptions and push us to confront fears or biases we didn't even realize we had. By stepping into the discomfort of growth, we find a deeper, more enduring courage. Finally, finding courage in community teaches us that courage doesn't always look like a grand, dramatic gesture. Sometimes it's as simple as showing up, listening, or standing by someone in their time of need. These small, consistent acts of courage multiplied across a community create a ripple effect that can change lives, including our own. In the end, what we come to understand is that courage, trust, vulnerability, and faith are not solitary pursuits. They are deeply rooted in connection, action, and the communities we build around us. Each of these elements is intertwined, creating a foundation for growth, resilience, and transformation. True strength lies not in standing alone, but in leaning into the relationships and experiences that shape us, allowing us to face challenges with authenticity and grace. As we navigate life's uncertainties, let us remember that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to step forward despite it. Trust action and the embrace of vulnerability are the tools that empower us to lead boldly and live meaningfully. Whether through personal growth, shared faith, or the bonds of community, we are stronger together, each step inspired and sustained by the connections we cultivate and the truths we uphold.